And welcome everyone to another edition of 90.9 WJB's Yo Just Checking In. I'm your host, Marcus Sims. And of course, we like to let you know about things that are happening in our area, whether entertainment, business, organizations, or people that you need to know. Now, admittedly, on this special show, we're doing something a little different because we're not keeping you within the Tennessee Valley. You're not in Huntsville, you're not in Athens, you're not in Coleman, you're not in Southern Tennessee. No, you're not in any of those places. In fact, you may want to get your passport together, make sure you've got your shots together, the whole nine. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we're going to Wakanda. That's right. We are going to Wakanda and we're going to find out a lot about the protectors of Wakanda. We're going to find out everything that you need to know about the Dora Milaje. So much information we're going to go over today. And I'm happy to have as a special guest a blogger, a writer, an author. There's probably more credits that I need to give her that I'm not touching on. And she's going to touch on her origin story before we go any further. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Yo Just Checking In, Karama Horne. Did I get you? First of all, did I say the name right? I want to make sure I said the name right.
You did. You did very well. Hi, everybody. I'm Karama Horne, aka the Blur Girl, and I am happy to be here. Thank you so much.
We are happy to have you on, and those who know me within my area know that I'm probably one of the biggest DC Marvel. I think I'm the North Alabama president of blurdom going on. So I think this is really an honor to have you on the show. And first and foremost, we want to say congratulations um,
Thank
on
you.
on the book. This book right here, ladies and gentlemen, right here, right here. If you can see it, great. If not,
There you go.
right there we go. Yeah, there we go. This book right here, awesome book. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a labor of love, and I didn't have a lot of time to work on it, but I'm excited for how it came out.
Now let's jump right into it. Before we talk about Protectors of Wakanda, which is, of course, we know is going to be somewhat tied into, we know Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever coming out, and I think it's a great, great book. I've read it. I mean, one of the, and we'll talk about some of the cool things that are going on in the book. But before we talk about the book, let's talk about your origin story. Tell everyone out there a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind. I wish I had a theme music I could play
Sure.
for you.
um, so yeah, it's funny. I grew up in a geek family. I've been a geek my whole life. I currently live in Brooklyn, New York. That's what we're talking to. I've never been to Tennessee, so I'm virtually visiting Tennessee right now. So, I grew up in a geek family. I grew up watching Star Wars and Star Trek and watching anime and stuff with my family. Like we all watched a lot of that stuff together. I used to joke, I think we were the only family I knew that had a family Crunchyroll account because we were all watching. My mother would watch, like, she loved foreign movies. So she would watch Korean dramas and Taiwanese dramas, and my brothers would watch anime and things like we would all watch that together. And then my dad was a very big Star Wars, Babylon 5 kind of guys. Anything with a star in it, Star Wars, Stargate, Star Trek, all of it. We always watched. So I didn't think that was really strange. I grew up actually in a predominantly white neighborhood in New Jersey. So I didn't know being a geek was weird because I was too busy kind of being the only black girl everywhere I went. I'm like, that was the strange part, I guess, to people. Then when I got to college, and I'm hanging out with black folks and I'm thinking everybody, not everybody has the same taste, but more people would know what I was talking about. They were like, no, that's some nerd stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, I definitely got into animation before I got into comics. Um, Simply because there were no comic book shops where I lived. So it's just, I wasn't in proximity. I was in suburbs. So but when I did get my hands on comics, I was really, really excited by a lot of X-Men, obviously, and Marvel first, but then DC as well. Um, Really, I think the first comic I remember putting my hands on was somebody in high school had brought in their older brothers or cousins or somebody's comic. It was Spider-Man Annual number 16, and it had Monica Rambeau on the cover, and it was her origin story. And I'd never seen a black woman in the comics before Storm. I hadn't seen another black woman in the comics, and I was fascinated. Um, And then, but I wouldn't say I started really collecting them until I was older and could use my own money, because my parents were like, you are not spending your money on that. So what was interesting was I was kind of always a geek, but never thought it was something I could sort of do for a living. And I actually have a TV and film background, and I ended up working for a long time as a video editor, editing commercials and things like that. And then one day, freelance, I was subcontracted to a company that was doing work for Sci-Fi, and Sci-Fi Wire was going out to San Diego Comic-Con, and they were looking for editors that knew something about comics. And I was like, I've been waiting my entire life for this moment. And so I was able to it was fun. It was amazing. I was able to basically, I wasn't really able to go to the convention because I was working it. It was just a bunch of us in a hotel next door with a bunch of edit bays, just kind of editing that footage that you see all day long with people standing up in front of what they call activations at different booths and stuff. And I had, it was fantastic. But while I was there, they were like, "Oh, well, you're pretty good at this. Do you produce?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "All right, pitch us some stuff." And so I was able to do some, I had a small, they were really more of an interstitial, but it was like a little geek news show that was on the Sci-Fi Wire, Sci-Fi channel for a while, and then over on YouTube for a while. And then that led to doing podcasts. And I was already doing behind the scenes. I was already doing the Blurred Girl podcast, the Blurred Girl website. And I think that was the other thing that was interesting. I'd always done the Blurred Girl stuff as a hobby. The Blurred Girl website has always been shouting about marginalized voices in genre entertainment. So comics, horror, fantasy, sci-fi. And so I was already going to conventions and interviewing people like I was, doing it for, like I was being hired, but it was just for my site. And so all that came together when I shifted gears and started working in entertainment more. I already had this library of stuff that I'd already done on social media as well as YouTube. Um, and so I basically was able to really leverage a lot of those relationships over at Sci-Fi, and I met a lot of incredible people. I interviewed a lot of amazing stars. I was on the red carpet for the first Black Panther. I talked to just about everybody that was on the Netflix Marvel series, and it was a lot of fun. And then I would do also, there's still videos of me floating around the internet of live stages that I've done at Comic Cons and talking to some amazing people. And even just last year, I hosted the Star Trek Discovery panel at New York Comic Con, which was a dream come true since Uhura is like one of my favorite characters. So all of this, I've been working in the field for a minute, and now I work as basically full time as a critic and a journalist in genre media. I have a column that I regularly write over at The Wrap. I review TV shows, and I also write for Rotten Tomatoes, Mashable, Sci-Fi Wire, like I mentioned, as well as Nerdist. So yeah, it's I'm really, really lucky, and I'm excited that a lot of my work has led me to working with Marvel.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. Now, as someone who grew up, admittedly playing Dungeons and Dragons, being probably the only black kid within about 200-mile radius that played Dungeons and Dragons or the Marvel superheroes role-playing game, or I used to growing up, we would get comics from the flea market because you could get 10 for $1 or something. So that was
Yeah.
probably the best way
Yep. Yep.
to get your comics. So they would never be in
10 for
order,
a
mind you.
dollar. Wow.
Right. Like, I mean, yeah, I
10
would
for
have
a
all
dollar.
those.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's yeah. So am I telling my age? I hope I'm not. But for the record, can you define what a blurred is? I mean, for someone who, I mean, I probably just said it so much. The minute I say Dungeons and Dragons and black, that may have been a key word right there. But what is a blurred?
It's so funny though, because what you're saying sounds like you were your own Lucas, like you're like from Stranger Things. You were
Yes,
like
yes.
Lucas Sinclair before Lucas was around. Um, well, when I started using the term blurred, I would say that was probably about 2015, 2016. And blurred, meaning black nerd, was sort of an online call signal to other people who liked things like comics, sci-fi, anime, fantasy, despite our representation not being in them that much. And when you were on well, websites and message boards and things like that, if you said you were a blurred, it was sort of like, oh, cool, you like the things that I like. I think it's really interesting because a lot of people don't want to use the term right now, and I think that's fine. In fact, I've met people who were like, I don't want to call myself a blurred. I don't see the need I don't see it necessary to call myself out like that. And I'm like, fine, you're welcome. When my friends and I were calling ourselves blurs, there was nobody out there. Like you couldn't Google like black girl geeks or black girl nerds or blurred girls or anything like that. None of that existed. So um I think that the interesting thing about the term though is when I was first using it, it was really just a call signal to everybody else. And we were all like, oh, okay, you my fam, you like what I like. We can have a conversation. I think now there's been just like any other term, any other group of people, it gets very divisive. And there are people out there who try and gatekeep and stuff like that. And that is precisely what I do not do with the Blur Girl. I don't subscribe to, if you picked up a comic for the first time yesterday or you never heard of Black Panther before the movie came out, that's fine. I'm not going to sit there and tell you like you're not a real nerd. I'm not one of those people, and I really have a problem with people who act like that, because that's not what the term blurred started out meaning, and that's not what it means now. It's really just um it's really about community. And I think some people have, if you take ownership in different ways, some people think that's cosplay. For some people, that's gaming. For some people, like you said, it's like tabletop, podcasting. But it really all centers around being fans, being part of fandoms inside of genre entertainment.
Now, one of the things I know firsthand is you don't approach Marvel. Marvel approaches you. It's like, I mean, obviously they're so huge now. Like, I mean, going up to Marvel with, hey, I got an idea. I don't know if that would, maybe one in a trillion chance that would work. How did you end up, how did Marvel come to you for this book, Detective of
Um,
Wakanda?
you're absolutely right. I tell people that all the time. Like, there's literally no walking into Marvel. The only times that I've seen that happen are comic book creators, when there are Marvel editors and writers and artists that are at conventions that are looking at portfolios. That's the only time I've ever seen Marvel actually do a call out. But you're right. They reached out to me, and a lot of people don't realize this. There's Marvel Comics, and then there's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is like Disney movies and stuff like that. And then there's the Marvel Publishing arm. And Marvel Publishing is a bunch of different publishers. So Marvel makes farms out their license to different publishing houses. And sometimes, so you might meet somebody who's written for Marvel and they have a Simon and Schuster book, and then somebody else might have a Penguin, Random House book. My book was published through a small publishing company called Quarto. Becker and Mayer owns that, and they do historical fiction.
Okay.
So when they reached out, it was very funny. Like I said, I work as a journalist. So when they reached out, in fact, I regularly interview, artists and writers in the geek space. When they reached out to me, they I was under the impression they were asking me to interview somebody who'd written a book about the Dora Milaje. They were like, no, 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 no. We want you to write the book. And I was like, what? Which is not what you're supposed to say, by the way. You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say, yes, thank you.
Right.
um, and they have written or published Wakanda Files, which is out. And they also have, which doesn't really have a lot to do with Wakanda, despite the title. It's sort of Shuri looking at the Avengers and the rest of the universe.
Hmm.
And they also had a book out called the Jedi Manual, and it's a way to become a Jedi, all the training and what you need to do to become a Jedi. And they said we really want something similar for the Dora Milaje, and I thought that was incredible. And then I was, terrified, because Star Wars has infinitely more canon and story behind it than the women of Wakanda do. And so it required a lot of research to pull these threads together, because the only rule they gave me is that I had to stick to the comics. So um that meant, for me, like, you can't, like in my book, Nakia, or Nakia, I guess as they're calling her in the film, is um is dead, because in the comics, in every iteration, in every universe, she's dead. So
Okay.
if I was going to work with Nakia in my book, it had to be in the past tense. So that's like an example of comic book rules versus MCU rules. And that's simply because the comics have been around longer and they move at a different pace. They move much faster and quicker, and there's more storylines going on than in the MCU.
Wow, wow. Now, for someone who does not know, because we know the protectors of Wakanda, the history and training manual for the Dora Milaje. Who are the Dora Milaje?
The Dora Milaje are the bald warrior women that many people have seen, obviously in the movies, but they are the King's Guard. Let's put it that way. They are the King's. They started out as just the King's Guard, and then through comics, they've expanded to basically have their reach across Wakanda, because the king can't be everywhere. So they are specially trained. In the comics, they were first introduced by Christopher Priest in his run of the Black Panther comics, and there was just two that he introduced us to then, and that was Nakia and Okoye. And what people also have to remember is Christopher Priest's comic book run was told through the eyes of another fictional character, Everett Ross, a white CIA agent. So many times what you're hearing is through Everett Ross's eyes, not as an observer, not through actually quote unquote what was happening. So these women spoke only to T'Challa, the king, and their role was to be both his eyes and ears and also his bodyguards. Now, does T'Challa need bodyguards? Not really, but again, they can do things and go places that he could not. So that storyline expanded inside the comics to include many more Dora. At different times, there have been as few as 4 and as many as 400 in each storyline, and they all share one thing or several things in common. Everybody knows who they are because of they're bald, and they usually have tattoos on their heads, and they also carry Wakandan weapons, i.e., spears and Kimoyo beads, and they also answer to the king, usually. But there have been times that they have, when there have been times of rebellion and things like that, when they haven't answered to the king, but they have always answered to one or two members of the royal family, and that is sort of like the briefest history I think I could give of them.
And for anyone who still may not be familiar, for those few who haven't, if you've seen, was it Falcon and the Winter Soldier? They stole that show.
Falcon the Winter Soldier, yeah.
Yeah, they
They
stole the
did.
show. They
They
pretty much
did.
stole that episode, you know. So, yeah, so that pretty much describes the Dora
Or
Milaje.
even and they were also one of them I was introduced in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the movie.
That's right.
Because
That's
she
right.
stood in front of Natasha and was like,
Oh
"Move
yeah,
or
she.
you will be moved." One of the
Oh
most famous
right, yeah,
Marvel
yeah,
lines.
yeah, yeah. She body Black Widow on that one. So that's kind of somewhat of an introduction, and why this book is so cool. Now, what I like about it is this book covers everything, history of the Dora Milaje. It even deals with how much they get paid. It deals with retirement plan for Dora Milaje. It deals with health benefits. It deals with if you can't make it in the Dora Milaje, we still got a plan for you lined up.
Well, I've always had that question. Like, what if you don't die in the battlefield? What if you just age out? What if you've got just, you 62 with some bad knees? What do you do? Like, there's still a
Right.
wealth of knowledge there. And again, as with, even though this is a fictional African society, in most real African societies, our elders are revered rather, and are the Iadora, the mother Dora, who I call them, are revered just as well. And so I thought that should be addressed in the book as well.
What research did you do? Like when Marvel came to you, and then that's a heck of a task. I'm thinking, now what's the next step for you to say, okay, I got this, I accepted this role. Now, what was the next step to researching or getting the ball going for this book?
Well, I had to outline it. Marvel demands an outline. They got to know where you're going and where you're going to end up. They do acknowledge the fact that the outline might change a little bit. So I had to do some really fast, quick research to make sure I knew where I was going and how I was going to get there. So I knew pretty early on that I wanted to tell this in a journal format. And so, and the concept of the book is that every Dora that goes to the school gets her own journal and every with all the rules and everything in it, and that's what this book is. And then in the margins, other Dora, other sisters might write in it. And when you graduate, you hand your journal as a graduate down to a new recruit.
Mm-hmm.
So the cycle continues, and then they get the knowledge of a bunch of different people, and that's what this. Those are all the voices in the margins and things like that that you see. So I knew I was going to do that. Um, but I had to make sure that I knew where I was going to be within the comic book universe. And I made the decision that I would make the book take place at the end of Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, where the intergalactic empire of Wakanda has been established, but we still have Wakanda Prime. And I know this is going to sound like a deep cut for people who don't read the comics, and you don't have to have read the comics to understand this book. I want to make sure
Right.
I'm very clear on that.
Yes.
But that's the time period within the, 'cause Marvel makes you do that. Like, you got to tell them where you're going to be in their universe. And the concept was, if you anybody read Roxane Gay's run of the Black Panther comic World of Wakanda, the head of the Dora Milaje school was killed. And so they have at this point reinstated there is a new head of the school, but her knowledge, the original, Mistress Zora, her knowledge hasn't, you know, been I'm sorry, Mistress Zola, her knowledge has not been erased. That needs to be, collected somewhere. So I was really excited about outlining it, and sort of I knew I was going to go with the tenets that you hear. Actually, if anybody's been to Disney World in California and you've gone to the Wakanda, I don't want to call it an exhibit, I want to say it's like an experience there. The Dora Milaje come out and they recite their 5 tenets, and I wanted to include those in the book, but then I also wanted to go deeper within each of those. And I think so I knew starting off I was going to be, tradition, honor, strength, courage, and compassion. From the jump I knew was going to be involved, because those are their 5 tenets. How was I going to break those down? Tradition, they definitely wanted me to talk about the kings of Wakanda, and I'm like, well, we have to, because we'd be no Dora without the kings. But I don't think people realize that there's more than like T'Challa and T'Chaka, that people who haven't read
Mm-hmm.
the comics. And the other thing that's interesting about Black Panther is that much of his story takes place outside, canonically, takes place outside of the comic books that are labeled Black Panther. Like, he's been in a lot of Fantastic Four. He was introduced
Right.
in a Fantastic Four comic. He's been in Avengers. He's been in X-Men. He's been, so it wasn't just about reading Black Panther. I own and collected a bunch of Black Panther comics, but I also needed to expand my research a little bit and go into places that I hadn't been before and make sure that I could pull those threads, because it was very clear that in this outline I had to demonstrate how I was going to place the Dora Milaje within the existing comic book universe. So, for instance, a lot of people know about Reginald Hudlin's run. There's a couple runs. The one he did where, Black Panther, T'Challa marries Storm, but then there's another run where he talks about T'Chaka, T'Challa's father, his father, Azuri,
Mm-hmm.
and being, meeting Captain America and the Howling Commandos during World War II. And that storyline takes place, like I said, in World War II, but there's Dora that are accompanying Azuri. Who are they? You know what I mean? Like, there's
Right.
always these beautiful women that are accompanying whoever the Black Panther is, but a lot of people, they're like often nameless. They're just kind of standing there. So I was giving agency to these different characters. And then on top of that, in one of Jonathan Hickman's runs, when T'Challa loses his powers and Shuri, his sister, becomes Black Panther, Bas, the goddess of Wakanda, grants T'Challa powers and makes him the king of the dead. And in so doing, she kind of does an avatar thing with him where he can now access all of the previous kings of Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
And many people don't realize there's 16 of them, including 2 women. And I wanted to make sure to highlight them. So, like, the outline existed, and then I sort of had to dig down in each section and explain what I was going to do in each section. And then once they gave me the okay, it was just a lot of research.
Right. Wow. So it took you back to the college days, huh?
It took me beyond that, because there was comics that I was looking at that came out before I was born. Like there was all kinds of things that were, I wanted to make sure I really not covered everything, but made sure I stayed within the canon of the comics and did it justice.
And I think one of the things that you said that we want to remind folks about that, of course, you did not have to follow all the different runs of the Black Panther books, comic books to follow to enjoy this particular book, Protectors of Wakanda. You don't have to sit there and have to follow, because there have been a lot that have come out since then that have come and gone. But I think you can definitely, as I've gone through it, you can definitely follow along with this book with great ease without having to follow T'Challa on the intergalactic Wakanda side of storyline or some of the other things that have happened.
Exactly. Like that was, yeah, that was really so that Marvel knew where I was going to be and what playground I was playing in. But yeah, no, this book, I wanted it to be for, oops, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Can you
There
still
you
hear
go.
me?
Yeah, we're still there.
Okay. That was strange. So yeah, the I want Marvel needed to know what playground I was playing in. But uh for me personally, like I made this book for my niece. My niece is like 4, and I want her to know these tenets, and I want her to think as an independent person. And this book is, I think many times people look at the door and they're like, oh, these are just a bunch of women that are just fighting men. And I'm like, that's not what they're doing. They have a job to protect their country, but they have their own lives, and and it's also about how the sisters take care of each other and what they do when they're not fighting. That was also very important to me too.
And now, I gotta say, you covered about 2 or 3 questions in that last one, so I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. But you're so awesome. No, question one. This is a double header. How many
Okay.
times did you actually see the Black Panther one? How many times did you actually see it? And why does it resonate so much with, why was it so just universally love? Because I remember when I saw, I'm not gonna say how many times I saw it because it'll sound real creepy. I will just say I probably paid for Black Panther's catering for their movie as many times as I've seen the movie. But why, how many times did you see it, and why is it just universally just praised? Like, even before I see Black Panther 2, I'm gonna watch Black Panther again. uh,
Yes, that's something that you
I,
have to do.
I think it's a must. Yeah, I think it's a must that you have to watch at least one more time before you go before the movie drops. But why is it loved so much, and how many times did you actually see Black Panther?
Um, as I mentioned, I was on the red carpet for the first one, so I saw it at the opening. But I at the time did not know I was going to be able to go to the red carpet, so I'd already bought tickets. So I'm trying to count in my head how many times. I know I saw it at least 8 times in theaters.
Okay,
And then at home, I think I put it on whenever it's a rainy day. Like, but curiously enough, when I was writing the book, I didn't watch it, because when they
okay,
gave me the directive that I could only stick to the comics, I didn't want to mix up MCU canon with comic book canon. I didn't want to do that.
exactly. Because I will say there is a, for those who don't know, there is a difference in character somewhat between T'Challa comics, T'Challa that you've seen in the movies. Just for the record,
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a difference in that one. I always joke with folks. He's in the comics. He's a king, so he kind of definitely has the king role going in the comics. So why is Black Panther just so loved by so many? Why was the movie young, old, black, white all seemed to love Black Panther? I think it was such a surprise of a movie when it came out because we knew it was going to be a hit. All it seems like 9.5 out of 10 Marvel movies are, but this one was just a huge hit. It was like number one for several weeks. Why?
It was number one for most of the year. I think it was the time period. So you have to think about it. It came out 2018 was a pretty big year. So in January of 2018, we got Black Lightning. Not first black superhero series, but first recent one.
Mm-hmm.
Then February we got Black Panther. You know, then it stayed in theaters all year. And then remember, at the end of that year, we had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And we also, I think in 2018, correct me if I'm wrong, we got a season 2 of Luke Cage. So there was a lot of Black superheroing happening.
True.
And if it wasn't Luke Cage, I think there was another, like it might have been Defenders or something. We had that whole Netflix Marvel universe going on because this was before Disney Plus. So 2016, you know, that was the presidential year. So then a lot of stuff changed. Obama left office. So I think by 2018, when Black Panther was coming out, and we saw the trailers for it in 2016, but by the time it came out, we were ready. Like, not only was everybody fans, comic book fans, but as Black folks, we just wanted to win. And then to see, you know, the gorgeous work, the production design by Hannah Beekler, and Ruth Carter's award-winning costume design. It wasn't just that it was well written and well acted, it looked stunning. And so much of Black cinema, and in terms of Black superhero stuff, we're not given those budgets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm convinced the reason why Misha Green got such a huge budget for Lovecraft Country, and the reason why Watchmen, which came out after, also got such a huge budget, was because they saw what Black Panther did. So first people are seeing it, and then they're seeing it again and again and again, and then they're dressing up to go see it. You know, so all of a sudden you have African Americans who hadn't seen, granted, this is a fictional African country, but they're seeing a superhero that looks like them, that is from Africa, and it's a country that had never been colonized. Even for people who'd never read the comics, that was huge. That premise was huge. And so I think that got the ball rolling, and then all of the hype, because I don't even think Marvel thought it was going to do as good as it did.
Right.
All of that hype, everything that came out of it, and then it started doing numbers that were rivaling Avengers. Like it made the most money for that Marvel had ever made for one of their movies before Endgame came out.
Mm.
It just was like, yes, Marvel movies since have, you know, made more money, but at the time it was destroying the box office. And so then I think you get this worldwide interest. Why is this movie resonating with so many people? Why are so many people looking at this movie and saying that's incredible? And then you get, that brings it down to the writing. The work that Ryan Coogler and his team did, writing not just T'Challa, but Killmonger, who is a very interesting story, although I also think that his father, N'Jobu, was also an incredible character. And the concept of this African country that's never been colonized, and we want to stay that way, versus, no, where were you when our people were dying in the States? Where were you? You know, that argument was a fascinating one to have, and also one that I think resonated with a lot of Black folks that have family that are not from this country. So my mother's from Bermuda. My boyfriend's got family from Haiti. So if you're first gen or second gen, you've had these conversations with relatives like, why are y'all so just, you know, why are you so hung up on all this stuff? Why can't you just share the wealth? And why can't we all just get some? You know, it's a very interesting back and forth they were having. And I think that storyline, coupled with the visual stunning impact that seeing Wakanda on screen, was what did it for so many.
True. And now this is the question that it's been going back and forth for quite a while now, and I'm sure, and you said that you and I know you wrote about it, blogged about it. Ultimately, should the role of T'Challa be recast? I'll be honest, if you ask me, I waffle on it all the time. I have not been able to get solid ground. I know how much the role of T'Challa with Chadwick Boseman embodies, but should the role have been recast? And then I look about the history of the Black Panther in the comics. And anyway, make a long story short, in your opinion, should the role of T'Challa have been recast?
It's a complicated question. So, first of all, should it have been recast for this movie? No. And I'll explain why. Anybody who's seen I did uh a investigative piece for Mashable.com about the recast T'Challa movement, talking to several people that started it and what that hashtag has sort of turned into and where it is now. And it's really not, a lot of it is not what people think it is. So, um, first of all, I respect the decision of the filmmaker, the family, the people who have this creative vision. This is their movie. I'm not going to go against that. I also am almost positive that T'Challa is going to be recast. Now, even though people are like, oh, but he said, they said, hear me out. Marvel does everything in phases. Black Panther, specifically Wakanda Forever, is the last movie in phase 4. They're
Mhm.
going into another phase now. And I think there is I think there's some confusion about how these storylines and these arcs work. So for instance, we we are not the same, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not in the same place it was when Iron Man came out, like how long ago?
Right.
That was the first movie, even though I will maintain that Blade is the first movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but
Say it
that's my
again.
opinion.
Say it again.
Blade is the first movie in the Marvel Cinematic Modern Universe, because when Blade came out, they thought that was a throwaway, and Blade made numbers, and that was basically the prototype for everything that came after. So I will maintain that technically Blade was the first movie, but um, so Chadwick, and I'm just gonna real quick because I can't remember. I believe he passed away. Yes, he passed away in August of 2020. Right.
Right.
Production, principal photography had already begun on Wakanda Forever. The movie was already being shot.
Okay. Mm.
So now I'm not saying that they didn't know he was sick. I don't think that they knew he was that sick. I think they kind of knew they were going to have to pad that suit up a little bit or something, but I
Mhm.
don't think that no one saw his death coming. You know what I mean? So you have, the train has already left the station. The film has already started to shoot, right? And I'm not saying that actors aren't replaced in things when other actors pass away. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they had a decision to make. Ryan Coogler, Boseman's family, the family of actors that did this film, had a decision to make. How do we go forward? Do we just pretend it didn't happen, or do we honor his memory and honor the character and still round out? Remember, Kevin Feige maps all this stuff out. Round out the, the massive storyline that they've been building to end Phase 4. They chose the latter. We're gonna honor his memory, and we're going to introduce some new characters and round out the phase. So I don't think that they should have recast for Wakanda Forever specifically, because that was the decision that the people who created this whole thing, i.e., Ryan Coogler and his team, that's the decision that they made. Also, you have to deal with a whole bunch, all of the actors in mourning over, someone that they worked with. So you also, it honors them as well. Now, there's a lot of back and forth as to whether or not he's ever going to be recast. People need to pay attention to what Marvel does. Marvel says stuff a lot. Marvel says, yeah, we're not recasting him in phase 4. Okay. Phase 4 is just about to end. We
Right.
also
Good
have
point.
the multiverse. We also have the multiverse of madness. We also have, like, there's a gazillion different ways this story could go. I highly doubt that Marvel, knowing how important that this character is never going to cast T'Challa again. It's just something that they could not do. Also, people are just kind of forgetting that between 2020 and now, there's been a whole pandemic. Like, recasting and starting from scratch on a $1 billion franchise is not, that's like turning a cruise ship. It's not simple. It's like a lot of pieces involved. So I respect the decision of the creators. I also firmly believe that they will recast, just not right now. And Marvel kind of can do whatever they want. I think the thing that has bothered me is a lot of the misogyny that's come out of not just the hashtag, but just the discussions. And again, I'm not saying everybody using the hashtag is misogynist. I'm not saying that everybody who doesn't want T'Challa to be recast is, a completionist. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying that this is a character and a group of actors and a movie and a storyline that means a lot to a lot of people, and it makes
Mhm.
people very emotional. And
Yes.
there's a lot of people being very emotional, and rightly so. I mean, we all mourned Chadwick's passing when it happened, but we're probably going to do it again in this movie. There is clearly a
Yeah.
funeral in this movie. So, everybody's going to have to prepare themselves. So, I know there's a bunch of different schools of thought on it, but I respect the creators, specifically Ryan Coogler and his team. I respect their creative vision, and I do not think this is the last we're going to see of T'Challa. Yes, I know what Marvel has said, but Marvel has said a lot of things in the past that they've changed. So I'm excited to see what Wakanda Forever looks like.
Right. I think Marvel can throw a swerve a lot of ways because I always joke about sometimes the scenes that you see in their commercials for the movies 50% of them don't end up in the actual movie, i.e., the Hulk in the Infinity War. So I mean,
Exactly.
right? They'll Marvel can throw a swerve, and you know, and I would, and I love that point that you made. So I think that's a strong point, and yeah, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah, we'll leave it at that right now. But always just on YouTube, Namor versus Shuri, ladies and gentlemen. Great story to check out.
No, it absolutely is. And there's a lot of also we don't know what Marvel's going to do because like I said, Marvel Cinematic Universe is different than the comics. My book is about the comics. And one of the things I was mentioning was that Naki is dead in my book, but Naki is not dead in the
Right.
MCU. Lupita Nyong'o plays Nakia, and she's, you know, knocking it out the park. And it's possible, like, maybe she's in the suit. We don't know. Listen, Marvel can do whatever they want. We're still going to pay money to see this movie.
Amen to that. Amen. I will be there decked out for real. If you don't mind, I want to step away. Let's step away from the Texas Wakanda one moment. I wanted to get your take on House of the Dragon. Of course, uh, I've went back and forth with friends of mine online and over the phone and via emails about that, especially the season finale. Did you get a chance to
Hmm.
see this season finale, and what did you think?
Yes, no, I absolutely saw it. In fact, I was just on Nerdist Live talking about this on their All Kings Considered podcast a couple days ago. Yeah, I did see it. I listen. I liked it. I think the thing that has bothered me, I did not read the books. I think the thing that has bothered me this season is a lot of the time jumps. I'm like, where is the fire? But I guess the fire is everybody wants to get to this great war, that the Targaryens have, and that's what's going to happen in season 2. But I just kind of the time jumps have been kind of off putting. I was. It's funny. I kind of felt like episode 9 felt like a little bit more like a season finale than episode 10 did, but then the dragon fight happened. But the moment little Luke got on that dragon, I was like, he gonna die. He ain't coming home, poor thing. Poor sight. He's not gonna make it. Um, but I did like the fact that now we have Rhaenyra, unfortunately, after the loss of 2 children and
Hmm.
being queen and then people not acknowledging that she's queen, she's coming for blood. I feel like the season premiere of season 2 of House of the Dragons is going to be all people burning because she's just going to take her dragon and go to town. And I think, one of the things that I've said is this is called House of the Dragons. I need us to stop. I would like all the conversation to stop. I would like to see some dragons, please. And we saw that in the season finale. Also, Aemon Targaryen is trash. So is Daemon. Daemon's trash. And here's the thing: all of these people are technically very problematic. And I just think it's really funny when you see people like, oh, but Alicent, especially Alicent, is like the ultimate Karen. Like you know,
Wow.
complaining, wanting everything to go her way, getting people arrested, getting people killed, and then being upset. Oh my God, why is this happening? Because you asked them to. You know, Allison's a problem. So there's, I think, it is, the soap opera of it is fascinating to watch. I think it's cinematically, it's stunning. Sometimes it's a little dark. Got to turn the brightness up on my TV. But you know, I've been enjoying it. Is it perfect? No.
Mm,
One of the things that I do hope to see is that, um, even though the black characters that are in the show are canonically black, they are, one of the characters is a descendant of a Moor. They are supposed to be black. Um, I just wish they were used more efficiently. I feel like there was a lot of yelling and screaming about black characters being on the show, and we had a lot of us defending, like, why can't black people be in fantasy? And then we just didn't see them do that much. The kids age up very quickly, like everybody else
mm,
does. But like, we saw, you know, Damon's wife for one episode and then she's dead. You know,
right.
the brother that was the sea snake's brother, I can't remember his name right now. He, you know, he always had a problem with all of the Targaryens, and you knew he was gonna die, but I was not prepared for how he went out. Um, so yeah, I think that I like the fact that they are in the story. And here's the thing, it's not just black folks dying. Everybody on this show catches it. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I think what I wish is that we saw more agency from the characters. You know, I want to see, when I thought that they killed off, I can't remember the sea snake's name right now, because I'll Corlys Valerian. When I thought they killed him off screen, I was upset because I'm like, no, don't do
Right.
that. You know, we finally got, you know, but he didn't die, which is what I was happy about. Um, but I think that I wish there was more. He's had the majority of the lines of any black character in the series, and I want to see more. I want to see all of the, not that they're the stars, they are secondary characters, but it would be nice if they had, you know, more than two lines in a scene with a bad wig. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my take on House of Angry Black People and Dragons. I mean, House
House.
of Angry Blonde People and Dragons.
Right, right, right. And I had to remind my friends all the time too. Look, this is not. This is these are two different. This is House of the Dragon. This is not Game of Thrones. You don't have the Starks to help you out. You don't have the same characters in there, so I kind of be somewhat patient with it. But you do have a Joffrey for what it's worth. So I mean you have a Joffrey, but other than
Yeah, and
that, you don't have the.
also you don't, and also the this book is, or this story is, about the downfall of this entire group of people. This is, you know, when we see Daenerys in Game of Thrones, she doesn't have a saddle for her dragons. You don't even know she's supposed to use one. Her dragons are tiny compared to what we're seeing in, you know, in House of the Dragons. We are, there's other things. When she was at the big table, that, you know, in the finale, that big table that they planned, you could see all of Westeros. She never lit it up underneath. She didn't know that table lit up. So there's all these things that you realize that by the time we get to Game of Thrones, Daenerys is just figuring out, because there's no one there to teach her. She is the last of her kind. This series is showing why they all died out. It's because they're trash.
Right, right. Because I was even saying, I was thinking in Game of Thrones, are there any Valerians on in Game of Thrones that I can think of? Is there any Valerians?
I'm
Uh,
trying to think. I mean,
because I can't
I'm
think of
not
a Valer.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
Right,
there were
because
any.
she's Daenerys Targaryen, right?
So there literally is no. So that gives
I
you a hint.
think I think technically Jon Snow, because remember we find out about Jon Snow's parentage. I think it's possible, and don't quote me on this, y'all, because I do not know this lore as well as I know other things. It's possible that maybe Jon Snow might be related to a Valerian. I don't know though.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just thinking. Yeah, but anyway. But yeah, that was just. It's a great. I enjoyed it for what it's worth. Yes, the time jump was very problematic for me. I had to rewatch or ask a lot of questions during it.
Well,
Um,
and also my problem was they didn't age up everybody at the same time. I feel like they let Aemond age up much more. Like his growth spurt was ridiculous. I'm like, who was this 30-year-old kid
Yeah,
in the house
yeah,
with the
he's
eye patch?
42 now. He's
Yeah, I'm like, what?
42.
And he's supposed to be younger than the king. And I'm like, how? Now I understand why they wanted that actor because he's amazing. I just don't think we should have seen him in the role until the season finale
Mm.
because many more years have passed. I think we still should have seen the younger one because all the other ones, even though they were recast, they still looked just a little bit older. He just looked like he walked out of central casting and they were like, yeah, like Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire being 30 in high school. Like this isn't working.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and yeah, and I think it's interesting how he and Damon look alike. Like, God
Mm-hmm.
forbid, like it's just, it could be Damon just wearing an eye patch, and I would fall for it literally. You know,
Exactly.
which I don't know. Maybe that's a point behind something. I don't know why he's looking like Damon and why they didn't gussy him up different, whatever. But that's neither here nor there. We're not going to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate so much what you've given so far. And I want to say congratulations. I know that you recently met up with Oscar Isaac. Am I correct? Oscar Isaac of Moon Knight, and
Yes,
I
I was very lucky. Yeah, I do a lot of hosting of events. I hosted at New York Comic Con. I hosted the Ghost Brothers panel for them for a Travel Channel. I've interviewed a bunch of different people for different shows, and I do a lot of work with Nerdist as well. And Oscar Isaac has a comic out through Legendary Comics called Head Wounds. It's his first comic, and he created it with a couple of his childhood friends. And the comic was uh, published by Legendary Comics, and Legendary Comics is owned by Legendary Pictures, and Legendary Pictures also owns Nerdist. So they were looking for sort of a New York correspondent kind of person to host this panel at Barnes and Nobles here at Union Square. And they were like, "Are you available?" I'm like, "To talk to Oscar Isaac? Yes, yes, I'm available." So yeah, that was fantastic. And I was floored when I walked into the green room and he was holding a copy of my book and was like, "Can you sign this?" And I was like, "What?" So that was really mind blowing. But I think the team did that. I don't think he kind of knew me off the street. And also, his co-writers were fans and also had books of their own because they were also Marvel fans. So that was just really a trippy moment.
right, and of course, Oscar Isaac, we know from Moon Knight, also from the Star Wars movies, and I
Yep,
really
Poe
love him the
Dameron.
most. I loved him from Dune. I mean, I loved his role
Yes,
in
he
the
was very
Dune.
good in Dune.
Yeah, I really loved him in the Dune series. So that's an awesome thing right there. Could you see yourself in the Dormelage?
You cut out a little bit there.
I
What did
said,
you say? I'm sorry.
could you see yourself as a member of the Dora?
Oh, I doubt it. Not the way I wrote them.
Well, I was getting
They
ready to
gotta.
say the way
They
that
have.
you wrote this book. Could you see yourself as rolling
I
with the
don't.
Dora?
I don't know if I had. Listen. I don't know because literally, they train for 7 years. They have to speak at least 8 languages by the time they graduate. They have to have weapons training, hand to hand combat. They have to be able to fight not just psychological warfare, but like empaths. Like they live in a universe that has mutants. So I don't know. It's very rigorous training. But if Boss chose me, then I guess I would be obliged to try.
You'd be obliged to try. What's next for you? What's coming up next? Of course, the book is out. It's doing great. We want folks to get the book. We also, hey, the holidays are coming up. A great stocking stuffer, Kwanzaa gift, birthday gift. A
Yes,
birthday still
absolutely.
coming up. What's next? What's next, though?
I actually will be in Baltimore this week for Baltimore Comic Con from the 20th to the 30th, doing some signings. I also currently co-host a podcast for a travel channel called Pop Paranormal, where me and my bae Chuck Collins talk about horror movies every week. It's a lot of fun,
Okay.
and so please check that out. It's Halloween season. And I actually have a couple more projects that I can't quite talk about yet, but one with PBS that I'm super excited about. So stay tuned.
So when that comes out, we're gonna have to have you back on. So ultimately, what do
I
you
appreciate it.
ultimately what do you want someone to get out of this book, The Protectors of Wakanda? They get it. What do you want them ultimately to get from it?
Like I mentioned, I kind of wrote it with my niece in mind, and I think the book is full of stories. So if you're a comic book reader, you're gonna love the little Easter eggs for different comic books that you've read, where I placed the Dora within those storylines. If you don't know anything about comics, I hope you're inspired by some of the just the stories themselves that are told individually. There's individual voices in this book of different women that tell their stories. And even though my book is not connected to the movie, I hope if you've been looking for more information about these beautiful bald warrior women, that you pick up the book and you're inspired, because one of my favorite chapters in the book is the compassion chapter, because it doesn't have to do with fighting, not physically, it's about mentally, and the fact that compassion is actually the strongest weapon they have in their arsenal. So I think there's a lot of images of just women, black women especially, just fighting and being warriors, which we have a long line of incredible warriors, in our history. But I think it's also important to talk about what we do when we're not fighting. And I tried to give agency to some of the characters in here by pulling things out of real life. And so I hope people find some inspiration in that.
Awesome, awesome. Now, could you throw out for those that are watching or listening right now, how to follow you on social media?
Oh, well, I'm the Blurred Girl everywhere. TheBlerdGurl. You can find me usually on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. That's usually the three places you can find me the most. And also, I do have a YouTube channel as well. So please check me out there. I'm going to be posting more videos and talking about the book, as well as just follow me around on these signings and some of these incredible people I'm meeting. Please definitely give me a follow. Definitely check out the book. And if you go to theblurredgirl.com, there's a way for you to purchase your own signed copy of Protectors of Wakanda. So check that out as well.
Okay, so definitely go to theblurredgirl.com and get the books and get, like I said, be a great thing to get. Birthday, the holiday seasons are coming up, or just get, hey, if maybe carry the book with you when you go see Wakanda Forever. Just carry it with you. Maybe it'll add to the vibe, right? If you're not rocking your dashiki or something funky, carry the book with you. But get the book. Go to theblurredgirl.com and check out and get your signed copy of the book. I'm gonna have to send Kevin a nasty email, because from what I've seen online, have they not invited you officially for the red carpet for Black Panther 2 yet? No, there's still time.
Yeah, I have not. I think, and again, this is what I was saying. Like the MCU is just different from publishing, and yeah, unfortunately, I think my name fell off of somebody's list, so I'm not going to be there. I will be at. There is a New York preview that is going to happen this week, and someone reached out and invited me to that, so I will be seeing the movie early. But yeah, you won't be seeing me on the red carpet, unfortunately,
Okay,
unless
Kevin.
somebody literally throws in a plane ticket like in the next few hours, because it's tomorrow.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to send Kevin a hardly worded email from my old Hotmail account or something and get on to him about that.
Not Hotmail. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness,
yeah,
Lycos.
right. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure at that point it'll go to his spam folder. But don't you worry, I'm gonna talk to him about that. You should be working the red carpet for him. Karama, thank you
Thank you
so
so much. I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you got a busy schedule. The book is awesome. It's called The Protectors of Wakanda, The History and Training Manual of the Dora Milaje. Get the book. Go out and support also the book. We want you to go to her website, give her the likes, the follows on the website, YouTube, the Instagram, Twitter. And this
And
has been
also, and also, I'm telling people, please, if you would like to buy the book and you don't want to like support Amazon or something, find a local bookstore, find a black bookstore, find a black comic book shop, and buy it from them, buy it through them.
definitely, definitely do that. Support the book. It's a great one. Of course, we are powered by 90.9 WJAB and WJAB.org. This has been a special, special, special presentation of Yo Just Checking In, where we took you out of the Tennessee Valley into the land of Wakanda and blurredom and much, much more. Uh, Karama, thank you so much for joining me. And Yeah, thank you so much.
Marcus. I appreciate it.
Thank you.